Welcome everybody. This is our first official lesson together in Algebra 1. So I'm going to take this a little slow just so that way you can get familiar with what these video lessons will be like, what I'll expect you to do, and just kind of like how these handouts flow. So at the top, they'll all kind of look the same. They'll have the topic of the lesson. Today's is using variables. Underneath that, you'll have a learning target, which is kind of what I expect you to be able to do after both watching this video lesson and practicing with this topic tomorrow in class. So for this variable lesson, I expect that you should be able to translate phrases and words into math symbols, expressions, and equations. The word translate here kind of like hits this right on the head for me. So I see math as kind of like its own foreign language. No, it's not the same as like Spanish and French, but it is its own foreign language in the sense that like there are words that represent math symbols and there are phrases that I can give you that represent an equation. So being able to translate between the English words and the math is a big part of Algebra 1. Okay, so this lesson kind of just goes through key terms, the basic like foundations here that are going to carry us through this whole school year. Okay, so the terms that you're going to see today are big and you have got to know this stuff. Hopefully a lot of it is familiar to you from middle school. I don't know, let's start and find out. So at the top we've got 3 terms that are huge that we need to define right away. Really important information to note. So the first term is variable, and that's in the topic here. So a variable is just a symbol, and in algebra it's usually a letter that represents a number. Okay, so you should write that definition exactly like I did onto your notes. Okay, these notes are given to you to help you study. This is all for you. So you want to write exactly what I do. Now, I'll give you an example. So I like to use different colors here just to kind of make that pop. Do the same if you'd like. Stick with pencil. I don't really care. They're your notes. Okay, so for x, this is what's called an expression, which I'll define in a minute. There's 2 parts. There's the 4 and there's the x. Now, the x, and you probably know this, but in algebra, x is the most common variable that we use. So the x part of this, the letter, that's our variable. And it's exactly what we said, you guys. It represents a number. So maybe in this case, x represents 3. So this is really just like 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay? Now, the next 2 terms are similar, but with one small but big difference. We've got expression and equation. Now, an expression, it basically is exactly what I just wrote. For x, it's something that doesn't have an equal sign. So I like to write the symbols sometimes instead of the whole word. So I just wrote equals. If you want to write the word equals, that's cool too. But basically, it's just a combination of letters and numbers without an equal sign. So I'll give you another example. We don't have to use x, maybe like 3y plus 2. So it's any combination of like letters, numbers, math symbols, tons of options here. Now an equation, that does have an equal sign. So it's still letters and numbers. We just got to throw the equal sign in there. So maybe something like negative 5m equals 10. Really easy way to remember which one has the equal sign, which one doesn't. The word equation almost has the full word equal in it. Okay, so if you can remember that, you've got a sure way to remember which one has the equal sign. All right, in this table here, this list is going to be important to have. This is something that when you're practicing this stuff in class, you could pull your notes out and say, oh yeah, this is what less than means, or this is what quotient means, whatever. So really important to jot all these terms down here, but we're going to make a list of words that represent addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, this is a reference sheet, really useful to have here. So let's start with addition. Let's start basic, maybe like add, plus, you'll see. If they use the word increased, that means addition. You'll see more than a lot. The word sum, that's a big one. Okay, I'm going to stop there and move to subtraction. So there we could say subtract, minus, decreased. You could see less than, and you will see that one a lot, and difference. There are more terms, but I'm going to stop there just for the sake of time. These are like the most popular ones. Now, I am going to highlight less than. Okay, this is the one that's going to trick people up. It does every year. You have got to remember something special about the words less than, you guys. When I give you a sentence, and we're going to practice this at the bottom, you can write your math exactly like the sentence reads unless you see the words less than. Okay, and I'm going to make a note here. Less than, you have to write it backwards. And I'll show you what I mean at the bottom here, but less than needs to jump out at you. You need to remember that that one is different from all of the others. Technically, more than is also different, and you should write it backwards, but when you're adding, it doesn't matter if you say 3 plus 4 or 4 plus 3. Both of those things are 7. Okay, but when you are talking about subtraction, it does matter what comes first because that will change the positive or the negative sign. Okay, so less than is special, don't forget it. Multiplication, we could say multiply. We could say times. Product, that's a good one. Double, twice, triple, those are all popular. So if they say double or twice, know that that means times by 2. And triple means times by 3. And then for division, we've got quotient, that's a good one, and half. That's about all I'm going to say. Know that if they tell you to half something, you just divide it by 2. Okay. And that's my cell phone, lovely. Don't let your cell phone go off in class this semester. Okay. Now, for the bottom part, we're going to practice. So they tell me to, in the directions, write an algebraic expression, that means no equal sign, for each phrase. So here's where it's like a foreign language. You're translating into math from this English sentence. So example A says 4 more than a number X. Okay, I don't see less than, so I'm just going to write it exactly like it reads. So it's 4. I know that more than means plus. And they tell me what variable I'm using X. Okay, if it's addition, you could write it the other way, x plus 4, it doesn't matter, but just write it like it reads. That's what I would do every time. For example, B, so 2 more than twice the number G, same thing, I don't see less than, so here I go. 2, I know more than is add again, twice G. Well, I know twice means times by 2, so I have to multiply G by 2. Now, in algebra, if you're multiplying, you don't use a symbol, you just write the two things next to each other like this, and you always write the number first. Okay, don't write G2, write 2G. Just looks nicer. You could flip-flop that around and say 2G plus 2, but we'll leave it like that. All right, I'm going to circle example C. Now, I do this almost always on the video lessons, but I will have you guys try certain examples on your own. Okay, so I'm expecting you, when you come to class next, to have this example C filled out here. Whether it's right or wrong, that's a totally different story. All I want to see is that you're giving effort, you're following along, you're listening to these notes, and you're trying things. Okay, if you do not try this, you will not get full credit on your notes. Okay, so give it a shot, see what you come up with. For example, D, here's where I see less than. Okay, so be careful. This one has got to go backwards. So I know the less than is subtract. I can't write 6 minus m because less than flip-flops it. M comes at the end, so that has to go first, and then 6. Okay, so 6 less than m is actually m minus 6. Be really careful there. Okay, and the last one on the front is the sum of, so sum is add, the sum of 13 and triple a number is 12. Ooh, and this one kind of rebels against the directions. You'll see why. But I want to add 13 and, so that kind of separates what I'm adding, triple a number. I'm just going to use x. I know that triples times 3. Now, this actually represents the equal sign. So this is actually an equation. What a rebel it is, this problem. This should equal 12. And this one's thrown in here, guys, because I really want you to know, because you're going to see it all year long, that is means equals. Okay, on the back, a few more examples. So these follow the rules. We're actually writing equations. All of these should have equal signs. And they tell me to define variables, then give an equation that models the situation. So all of these are real-world situations, and we can write a math equation to represent what's going on between the two subjects that I'm talking about. Okay, so the first topic is what's the total cost of buying several shirts at $24.95 each? Okay, so maybe you're going to go into H&M and stock up on some basic tees. Each one's $24.95. I want to know how much I'm going to spend. We can write a math equation to represent that. Yay! Now, when it says define variables, that means pick out what two things you're talking about that you don't know the quantity for, that you need to give a letter to represent. So in this situation, I'm talking about the total cost and the shirts. I don't know how much I'm going to spend. I'm not sure how many basic tees I'm going to pick up. So let's use some letters. Use what makes sense. Let's do C for the cost, and I'm going to use S for shirts. Make it a clear S so it doesn't look like a 5. If you're talking about total cost, that is going to go by itself. Okay, so I want to know how much I'm going to spend. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So my cost is going to equal, let's see, I don't know how many shirts I'm going to buy, but I know multiplication is going to represent this because I'm just going to multiply $24.95 by how many shirts I'm getting, and that's going to give me my cost. I got my equal sign, there's my equation. I could use this to figure out how much I'm going to spend, plus tax. All right, for B, so the total cost equals the price of the tickets multiplied by 12 people. So I'm going to pay for 12 people at the movies. Yikes, that would be really expensive. But same thing. I'm talking about the cost, and I know there's 12 people, but I don't know the price of a movie ticket, which is like outrageous these days. But I've got to define variables. So I'm going to do C again for the cost and P for the price of a ticket. Hopefully, and they tell me, I know that multiplication is the operation I'm going to use here, but my cost, how much I'm going to spend, I'm going to take the number of people and multiply it by how much a ticket is, and that's going to give me my cost. There's my equation. Okay, for C, it's still a situation, but they didn't give me it in sentence form. They put it in a table. So I'm talking about the number of workers. So let's go ahead and just do W. And number of tables built. Very exciting topic. Let's use T. So it looks like if there's one person working, they built 13 tables. 2 people, 26, 3, 39, 4, 52. I got to figure out how many tables are built? Like, how does that relate to how many people are building the tables? How do these two numbers relate? So if I look at one row at a time, hopefully you can pick out that they're just multiplying by 13 every time. And that gives you the total tables built. I got to represent this in equation form with my variables. So whatever's on the right-hand side, that's going to go alone on one side of your equation. That's kind of what you're solving for, what you're figuring out. So the tables built, I'm going to take 13 and times it by how many workers. That number is going to change. That's why we use W, because I don't know the exact quantity for each situation. So T equals 13W. Okay, I'm going to circle D. I want you guys to try this one on your own, and I will check it tomorrow in class.